Hey guys, how's it going? Plastic Guy here, coming back with another figure review, and today we're checking out the latest CT Toys knockoff with their Mafex 75 comic book Spider-Man action figure. Taking a look at the packaging, at the front we can see this cool picture of the figure, of course ripping off the Mafex photos on the box here. We get 75 6-inch CT Toys with that McFarlane style logo in the top left, display of the figure, CT Toys logo. You can see the top of the packaging there. We get this side of the box, we get the other side of the box, and then the back of the packaging with all the Mafex images that we've seen before. I do have the legitimate version of the figure here. We've reviewed this figure here on the channel in the past, and of course we will compare the legitimate version to our CT Toys bootleg in the video. So with the interchangeable parts and accessories that we get with this CT Toys figure, a lot of it we have seen in the past, whether it be with the legitimate Mafex 75 or the 185 or the previous CT Toys bootleg Spider-Man figures, and so I'm not going to run over it all, but I do want to just quickly look at what we get and some of the new stuff included. So of course all the usual web accessories, magnetic feet, web whipping hands, web line holding hands, clobbering time fisted hands, magnetic wall crawling hands, and your normal standard wall crawling hands, loose mask accessory. We get this alternative head sculpt here, and this is obviously based off head sculpts we've seen in the past, whether it be the 185 or the legitimate Mafex 75, and the web lines just aren't really looking up to the usual standard from CT Toys here. You can see on that left side of the mask it doesn't look too great, but I do just think it's I think some of the black web lining has sort of disappeared on the left hand side, which makes it look a wee bit off. But overall, I mean, the sculpt is there. Maybe if I went in with a marker, I don't know why that makes it look so odd. Is it just me? It looks a lot more off than it should be if it is just that black web line. But yeah, maybe I'll go in over that with a marker and see how it looks in the end. Overall, I think it looks alright, but yeah, missing that black web line does make it look a wee bit off. We then get the Peter Parker head sculpt, and I'd seen a couple images of this from other collectors and it looked kind of bad. I was a bit worried about what this one would look like, but it looks pretty good. I think if anything the flesh tone is a wee bit off. Let's compare it to the official Peter Parker head sculpt. So we've got the legitimate Mafex Peter Parker head sculpt on the left and our CT Toys bootleg on the right, and CT Toys have absolutely nailed it. Seeing these next to one another, it is a lot better than I initially thought. You can tell the skin tone is a bit different. He's definitely got a wee bit more of a tan on the CT Toys version, but the sculpt is absolutely incredible. There is a lot more definition in the hair on your official version, but the CT Toys is not bad at all. That looks great. And again, when it came to bootlegs of time before, you know, CT Toys have really changed the game, and one of the most popular bootlegs I believe was the Mafex Spider-Man. You would see that all over AliExpress, all over eBay, and the biggest telltale for that bootleg was the Peter Parker head sculpt. It looked awful. It looked like a fish. I mean, it was really badly done. And so to see a bootleg figure capturing the likeness of the official version to this level really goes to show how great a job CT Toys is doing. That is pretty impressive. And on that note, while I'm singing CT Toys praises, not only are CT Toys nailing those original counterparts in their bootleg form, but they're also giving us these additional interchangeable parts and accessories. We've got this brand new head sculpt that wasn't included with the Mafex 75, and unfortunately on this copy I don't think it's been executed as well as the normal CT Toys quality, which is a shame. You can see that right hand lens is bleeding over into the middle of the mask. It does look a bit wonky, which is unfortunate because it's an awesome idea. It looks like a really good head sculpt, but unfortunately the QC isn't 100%, especially when you compare it to that PS4 Spider-Man head sculpt that they included with their CT Toys Ben Reilly Mafex knockoff. It looks terrific. Same idea with their Mafex 75 here, but definitely not up to scratch with what we've seen before, which again is really unfortunate. I do want to see if this PS4 Spider-Man head sculpt will port onto their Mafex 75 here. But then we have the figure itself, and I think this is another absolutely fantastic CT Toys knockoff action figure. Your legitimate Mafex comic Spidey 75 is retailing for around $100. It's the more expensive of the two Mafex comic Spider-Man figures. It does have more interchangeable parts and accessories, and I don't even know if it's stocked at retail at the moment, and so getting this for under $20 from CT Toys, I don't think you could really complain. CT Toys are releasing figures left, right and centre at the moment. I've got Gambit on the way, and I've just recorded a video looking at their SH Figure Art Spider-Punk. I don't know what video I'll upload first, whether it be this Mafex 75 or their Spider-Punk, but my main criticism of Spidey-Punk was that the plastic felt pretty cheap, and of course these aren't premium products, they are cheap bootlegs. However, with that being said, I think compared to the usual CT Toys quality, the Spider-Punk just felt a wee bit on the cheap side when it came to the plastic. Some of the joints were a wee bit loose for my liking. However, getting this Mafex 75 knockoff in hand, this is up to your usual CT Toys quality. Those joints are not loose in the slightest. This feels really good, and the plastic itself feels really nice, and so I'm really stoked to be getting this sort of quality again from CT Toys. Not that the Spider-Punk was bad, but I do think if you were to compare this one to that one, overall this feels a lot better in hand, and it looks absolutely incredible. The head sculpt, when you compare it to that legitimate real deal Mafex 75, which we will do later in this video, I don't know, there's something about these CT Toys Mafex Spidey head sculpts that just look a wee bit off to me. I don't know if the lenses are just a wee bit too far apart, but it looks good. It just doesn't look as good as your legitimate version. But yeah, I'm not really complaining, again, for the price point and it being a CT Toys figure. It is what it is, but it's definitely something that I notice. I do have some paint smudges here and there. You can see there is a wee bit of shiny blue where it should be red, and where the blue meets the web lines, there is some slight smudging. It is mostly noticeable on this arm here. You can see that red sort of bleeding over that web line, but again, for the price point, for it being a CT Toys figure, it does not bother me in the slightest. Overall, I think this looks incredible. It feels really nice, and of course we get that new head sculpt that wasn't included with the Mafex 75, and I hope if you are picking up this figure you get a copy that is better than mine right here, because it's a really nice idea. I think it does look a really good head sculpt, but unfortunately the lenses on mine are just a bit iffy. I don't know, I could probably use it in a couple of pictures. At that angle you can't really notice. But yeah, from head on you can see that that lens just isn't sitting quite right. And of course I do want to then see how the PS4 head sculpt looks that came with the CT Toys Ben Reilly Mafex Bootleg. And that looks really good. I love that about CT Toys with their Wolverine bootlegs and now their Spider-Man bootlegs. They're including these interchangeable parts and accessories that you can switch between all the different knockoffs, and I do think it means that picking up these knockoffs are worth your while that wee bit more. I mean, of course they are a lot cheaper than the counterparts, the legitimate counterparts, but the fun factor just seriously increases when you're able to swap head sculpts around like this. And yeah, I'm really stoked on that. I think that's really cool. And so here is our CT Toys knockoff next to the real deal, the legitimate Mafex 75. and it isn't one-to-one. You can see that the CT Toys is standing a bit smaller, the proportions aren't the same as the original, but I think when you look at the paint here, one of the more unique things about that legitimate Mafex 75 is that shinier blue. Their initial comic book Spidey 75, when it was released, had a much more dull blue, a lot more of a matte finish, and when they did that reissue, they changed the paint up to this shinier blue. And I think that was something that was really cool about that figure. And CT Toys have done a really good job at replicating that for their knockoff. I do think that it looks really good. I think this I think the original Mafex does still look that wee bit better. I think the blue looks a bit better in terms of the finish. When you see the light hitting that CT Toys, it's maybe a bit too shiny in comparison to the original there, but again, for the price point you're paying for these CT Toys figures, I'm not complaining in the slightest. They have done a great job at replicating the original. Of course, the original, I think, is that wee bit more sleek, and again, the head sculpt, in my eyes, is a lot better. To show off that head sculpt a bit closer, I really can't nail it down. I think the lenses are a wee bit closer together, but I don't know what it is. The Mafex wins 10 times out of 10 when it comes to the head sculpt. It just looks a bit janky in comparison to the CT Toys version, but again, if you know what you're getting into, you're spending that price point, you're buying the CT Toys, I don't think it's something that you're gonna let get to you. It's not totally going to ruin the figure, and of course £100 Mafex import action figure is going to be better than the CT Toys, but of course I need to point that out. For some reason they are just not quite nailing the head sculpt of the original. But seeing these two side by side, it takes me back to when I didn't have any import action figures. Now I do have probably more than I should, but I wasn't really sure where to spend my money, and I remember sitting there thinking about buying that legitimate Mafex Spidey figure. Spider-Man is my favourite character of all time, and I thought, do I pull the trigger and spend a lot more money than I ever have done on an action figure to get an import Spidey? And I couldn't bring myself to do it. I bought that original Mafex bootleg that saturated the market, that came with that horrible Peter Parker head sculpt, and I was pretty impressed overall with that bootleg at the time. I thought it was actually pretty decent for the money. Now, in hindsight and comparing it to the CT Toys, it is absolutely horrible, and I wouldn't advise anyone to pick that bootleg up. But it really goes to show how far CT Toys have come and how much they have changed the bootleg game, because for the price point I would definitely recommend picking up a CT Toys figure. You know, of course it's not as good as the original, and if you can afford it, if you are contemplating buying a Mafex, go for it. You're not going to regret buying a Mafex action figure. It is worth the money, they feel amazing, they're a lot of fun. But if you're not too sure about it, if you're like me back then and you're kind of humming and hawing about spending that money, again, CT Toys is far better quality than any other sort of knockoff bootleg that I was going to say that I've had, but I have held other bootlegs that are really good. Of course, we looked at that Yujiro Hanma bootleg here on the channel, and I don't believe it was from CT Toys. It was also a great bootleg, so I think just the time we're in now, bootleg action figures are way better than they used to be. And yeah, seeing this CT Toys and how well they're doing replicating the originals really takes me back to when bootlegs weren't doing a good job at knocking off those Mafex figures. Here is our CT Toys 75 next to our CT Toys 185, and you can see that these two are pretty much identical when it comes to sculpt. It's just that colour of blue that's different, and so it is just going to come down to your personal preference. I don't know what one I prefer. I love both of these looks to Spidey. I do think that 75 looks pretty good. And here is our CT Toys 75 next to the legitimate Mafex 185. And I've shown off on the channel before how I've got this smudge on the head sculpt of this Mafex 185. It came out the packaging like this, and it has always really bothered me. It's really hard to ignore. I feel like it ruins photos, and so I finally got a custom head sculpt. I was ordering a custom Raimi Spider-Man head sculpt from Pharrell35 over on Instagram for the Mafex Toby action figure. Of course, those stock Raimi head sculpts are pretty awful on all these action figure company releases, and so I got the version 60. We'll definitely be posting a lot of pictures of the version 60 for Mafex Toby over on Instagram. I've already posted a few photos with Audi Art Studios version 2 on the Mafex Toby, and both of those Raimi head sculpts are incredible. Again, coming from Pharrell35, who has also made this head sculpt for the Mafex 185 here. I love this look for Spider-Man, and Pharrell has absolutely nailed this head sculpt. I'm so happy that I don't have to have this premium import expensive Mafex Spider-Man figure with a smudged head sculpt. It honestly bummed me out way more than it probably should have, and I feel so good that not only is this giving a totally different look to the figure, but it's just, you know, there's no flaws in the head sculpt. It's really bringing it down at all. I love this look for Spider-Man. I love how this figure no longer has a smudge on the face. And yeah, I wanted to quickly show that off in the video here. I would definitely need to pose this around with the head sculpt and get some pictures over on Instagram, so I'll leave the link to my Instagram down in the description below, and I'll need to get posing pretty soon. Here's our CT Toys Spidey next to another couple of comic Spider-Man figures coming from Marvel Legends. We've got the Renew Your Vows on the left and the AF-15 on the right. And of course the price difference between these are shortened. You know, comparing your CT Toys to an import action figure, the price difference is huge. Comparing it to a retail Marvel Legends are only that wee bit more expensive. Your CT Toys are definitely still a lot cheaper. They come with a lot more interchangeable parts and accessories. But I was just thinking, and being honest, if it came down to buying an AF-15 Marvel Legends or a CT Toys, I'd still go for a Marvel Legends. But then bringing in these Marvel Legends comic Spideys, the price conversation does then get a bit more difficult, because you've got this VHS 2-pack Spider-Man, which is on an outdated body mold. For the price you're paying for that 2-pack, this shouldn't have been on the Sunfire body mold. It does look like a really good Spider-Man figure overall, but the posability should have been similar to your Maximum Series Spider-Man figure, which I love. I think this is probably the best comic book Spider-Man action figure, but of course you're paying for it, and you're talking over £30 difference between your Maximum Series Spidey and your CT Toys Bootleg. And here he is next to a couple of Marvel Legends Spider-Man villains. And so there we have it for our CT Toys knockoff Mafex 75 comic book Spider-Man action figure. And this is another great bootleg from CT Toys. It's a great Spider-Man action figure. I do believe it ticks all the boxes. You're getting all those interchangeable parts and accessories, including web accessories, all the hands that you need. You get an alternative Peter Parker head sculpt, as well as additional masked head sculpts, all for under £20. It is really hard to complain, especially when CT Toys are giving us all those things at this quality. Of course, I'm never going to say get this over the original. If you've got the cash, then buy the Mafex. But another really good thing to consider about the CT Toys figures, you know, Mafex and other import companies aren't known to be the most sturdy action figures. A lot of the time they can break on collectors, pegs can snap, etc. And so if you're wanting a comic book Spidey to really play around with for the long haul and get into more experimental poses, then I would consider getting a CT Toys, because I think it's a lot better to break a less than £20 action figure than break a £100 Spider-Man action figure. I'm always very cautious when I'm posing my Mafex and Figure Arts, and I was going to say Amazing Yamaguchi, but they fall apart regardless. I'm always probably overly cautious, and so a CT Toys can guarantee a lot more fun. If you're just wanting to quickly pose that thing around, get it in maybe some more dynamic posing, then you're not going to have to worry as much, because you've spent a lot less money at the end of the day, and they have done a great job at what they've given us. So yeah, it's another thing to look at. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. While you're down there, guys, if you could do me a massive favour, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, then please hit that subscribe button. I'll leave the link to my Instagram down in the description below, where I'll probably post a couple of pictures of this figure up there sometime soon. I am posing the Mafex Toby around like crazy at the moment, so a lot of the pictures are really revolving around that figure, but hey, I've always got time for Comic Spy Day as well. So yeah, Instagram link down in the description. It'd mean a lot if you could check it out. I love the Instagram side of stuff. Feel free to hop on over to the YouTube page as well. There are a lot of other CT Toys reviews, a lot of other Spider-Man figure reviews. It'd mean a lot if you could check that out. And it means a lot that you've watched this video right here. So thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, I'll catch yous on the flip-flop later. Cheers.